Welcome. How is everybody doing tonight? Hope you guys are doing well. My name is Jamie. You guys know me as Mystic Mac DFS. I posted a few videos earlier today, running back videos, wide receiver videos. And for this evening, I'm just going to go over 2 to 3 lineup building strategies, kind of let you know where I'm thinking, where my head is at going into tomorrow's slate. We'll build, like I said, 2 to 3 different ones with 2 to 3 different options. Um, just so you guys can get kind of an idea on what like I said, what it is I'm thinking, where it is I'm planning on going, and kind of the reasons why. So we're just gonna go ahead and hop straight into this. We're gonna start here. We're gonna start with one of my favorite stacks of the week, Cardell Jones. If you guys met or watched the quarterback video earlier in the week, you guys noticed that I mentioned Cardell Jones was one of my 3 favorite quarterbacks. And last week, he threw the least amount of pass attempts on the slate. However, it just wasn't a necessity for him to throw the ball. I think that this DC team is going to be throwing the ball a lot. Even if they aren't throwing the ball 80% of the time, 90% of the time, like June Jones or some of these other teams are, I still think that this is going to be a very efficient offense. And I think that Cardell Jones was a guy that he ran play action 32% of the time, which led the league by far last week, and that's something I'm gonna have a lot of interest in as well. There's been a lot of research to show about how much more efficient and how much successful offenses are when they run play action, regardless of if the run has been established or whatever have you. That doesn't matter. That is irrelevant. Throwing play action or running play action passes is going to always make your offense much more efficient, your passing game much more efficient. So it's good to see that Cardell is doing that. So I'm going to go and put Cardell in here. Let's go ahead and click on this game because this is going to be a game that I like. So we can pair him up, and we're looking at guys that we want to pair him up with. Rashad Ross is going to be a popular guy. Rashad Ross is always going to be your deep threat guy, right? He's going to be a guy that's has a very good chance of having a 15 or 18 average depth of target this season because he's going to be just throwing the ball down the field a ton. So I think as far as from a big play perspective, he's absolutely fine. He is pretty expensive for a guy that might only see 5 or 6 targets at the most, and then you're kind of banking on a big play. As we can see last week, he only saw 2 targets. Both of these were deep down the field. And he only brought down one of them and happened to be a touchdown, so people kind of lucked out from that regard. I still think he's a fine play, but I do think he's going to pick up ownership. So for this, I'm going to kind of lean on Eli Rogers. I like Eli Rogers a good amount. We do know that DeAndre Hopkins is expected to play this week. And also we got notice, I think it was early this morning, that Eli Rogers is expected to still play, but he's actually still questionable. They said, but he expected to make it back in town for the game in time. Just keep an eye on it. I expect him to play, but just make sure you're checking. Since this is the first game, we're gonna have at least a good idea. But just make sure you're checking ahead of time before you go ahead and plug it in, because if he's out, it's gonna go ahead and bump some other guys. So I like Cardell Jones. I like Eli Rogers. And like I said, we can go ahead and we could put in Rashad Ross if we liked, but I still like Malachi Dupree, still a decent amount. I think that DeAndre Hopkins back could ultimately hurt him a little bit, but he's still 4.5K, and he led the team in snaps last week. So that's going to be something that I'm going to have interest in. So we're going to go ahead and plug him in here. Now, I like to bring it back with one of my favorite wide receiver plays on the slate, Joe Horn. He's going to be popular. He's 3.4K. But he just played a ton of snaps. He saw 8 targets last week, and he didn't get a price bump, whereas, we see Mikael McKay, his teammate, the number 1 price wide receiver on the slate. I'm sorry, he's actually number 2 behind Nelson Spruce, but still, he's 10.2K. We saw Kobe Pearson get a price increase up to 7.2K, and we see Joe Horn down here at 3.4K. So Joe Horn's going to be a guy I have a lot of interest in. Specifically for cash games, I definitely understand the fade in tournaments, but I think for this lineup he does fit pretty well. But I wouldn't be opposed whatsoever. You put Mikael McKay because he's still going to be the number 1 option on this team. And with this, you have about 5K left. You can throw in, like I mentioned last week, just any defense. Defense, like I said, we want to get as much exposure to defenses as possible. Dragons is a pretty good defense, pretty good value since it's the cheapest one, and they are going to be going up against backup quarterbacks Quentin Flowers and Cornelis. So we'll go ahead and plug them in. So with McKay, we have 6.2K left. Okay, we have Joe Horn. We have a good chunk left. So 9.6K to do whatever you want. Okay, so that spot's totally up to you. What you, I recommend getting exposure to both of them at different points. For now, we'll just keep Joe Horn in, and like I said, we can kind of move that later. So from here, from a running back's perspective, Jarrell Presley is going to be a guy I'm going to have a lot of interest in this week as well. Just like I mentioned last week, I'm going to be doing a lot of hedging as when if I play a few Cardell Jones lineups, I'm going to make sure that I have a few Jarrell Presley lineups because I do like DC as a whole this week. So I'm going to make sure I get exposure there. In this lineup, obviously, we have Cardell Jones, so I'm not going to go there. I think Elijah Hood is going to go extremely overlooked this week, and he actually ran a decent amount of routes and was played 70% of the team snaps. Only was one of 2 running backs that played 70% of the team snaps. So I kind of like to go him, so we can go ahead and plug him in. Here we have anything. We can play any player we want on the entire slate here in this last flex spot with Joe Horn here. So we could put in Nelson Spruce. You could put in Sammy Coates, a guy who I absolutely love this week. We'll get to him, though, in a second. Really, you can put up any of these guys, right? And if you didn't like Joe Horn, get rid of Joe Horn. Put in Mikael McKay, bring it back with him. Then you get 5.9K. Then you still get some solid guys over here, right? Flynn Nagel, Nick Hawley, Lance Dunbar, although ideally, I would rather have only one running back on most of my lineups. But that's kind of a route that I think you could go here. Now let's go with this Houston-St. Louis game that I kind of like a decent amount. I like both sides. Let's start with P.J. Walker, popular guy. Was the most popular guy, should have been the most popular guy last week. Was definitely the best quarterback on the slate. He will be probably the most popular this week since he is the highest priced. But we like him. June Jones is going to chuck the ball a ton, like we mentioned last week, guys. This is just going to be an offense we're going to want to be targeting a good amount. And my favorite guy here, Cam Phillips is obviously going to be the most secure. He's 8.4K. He's the cheapest out of these wide receivers, and he played 100% of the snaps. So, right, when you're the cheapest and you play the most snaps, you're obviously probably going to be the most secure. So, for the cash games, I think he's a really strong play. Even for tournaments, I still think he's a fine play. But I really like Sammy Coates here, guys. Sammy Coates, he saw 9 targets last week, but he only caught 2 of them. He had 5 points. 26 receiving yards. So I think a lot of the people that played him are probably going to think, wow, Sammy Coates is Sammy Coates, right? Getting targeted a ton, catching a small portion, 25% of these passes, right? And that's still going to be the case of Sammy Coates. That is Sammy Coates, right? He's not going to probably get targeted 9 times and bring down nine receptions with that. But he's going to be a big play threat. And I think he's just going to be involved a lot. I'm going to have a lot of interest in Sammy Coates. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate. So we go here, then bringing it back with someone. On Houston, I like a lot of these guys on Houston. I think, like I said, Cam Phillips is fine. Khalil Lewis is still fine. Nick Hawley, who's actually listed as a running back, only 4.8K, he's fine. You could do something where if you really didn't want to play if you really want to play a running back, you could easily play Nick Hawley. He's not going to target his running backs often, but he truthfully isn't going to be playing running back. James Butler played the running back positions. Nick Hawley played out wide. So I think that he definitely has some appeal. But for this, I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to go ahead and just bring it back with Cam Phillips. I like that 100% of snaps. Khalil Lewis, absolutely fine. Khalil Lewis was my favorite wide receiver on this team last week, and that did pan out pretty well. But this is how I like to start that here. As far as bringing it back, there's a few different options. Pearson L, he's very solid. Played in the slot a good chunk. He's 8K. I think that he's going to be a guy I'll have a decent amount of interest in. But as far as my favorite here, it's going to be LaDainian Washington. He's going to be a guy that I'm going to have a lot of interest in just because of his price tag. He is, like I said, you can see here, is 4.4K, which is just extremely cheap for a guy that led this team in snaps. So he played 96% of the team snaps, the second highest wide receiver, played 80% of the team snaps. And he was the only wide receiver or skill position player in general to run for 30 plus routes on the slate or on this team. So this is going to be someone I'm going to have interest in. So we're going to bring it back. I like to bring it back with him. We'll just plug in a random defense here. Like I said, we did Dragons last time. We'll just go with, let's go opposite with the Vipers. So I think that's fine. So we have 2 spots left. I'm not going to completely fill it out, but just to give you guys some ideas, right? You go anywhere you want. You can easily put in Devin Smith, who I think is one of the better running back plays. Jarrell Presley, like I said, I think is going to be a good guy to put in because he's going to be able to hedge your Cardell Jones lineups. Another running back that I like a good chunk. He's probably one of my favorite lower price guys. That's Lance Dunbar. So he didn't play a ton of snaps, but he did lead this team in rush attempts and lead this team in targets, right? So he had 11 touches, and he's only 4.6K. And this is going to be a team that's going to be passing the ball a ton. They had the highest pass rate after 1 week. And it's going to be a guy I'm going to want to get pieces of. Dallas did actually target their running backs at the highest clip. I think like 35% of their passes went to running backs. I don't think it'll necessarily be that high going forward, but I do think they're in this up-tempo offense that they're going to want to check it down at times. I think Lance Dunbar has a lot of upside. I think he's a strong play here. So you can easily plug him in there. Then you have the 8.7K. And then you could look over here. Jeff Badette, same team. You might not want to get guys on the same team, but Dan Williams, who blew up last week, 7.6K. Colby Pearson. There's a lot of these guys up here that I think are pretty interesting. All right, guys, let's just build one more kind of quick one. So there's a few quarterbacks that I do kind of like this week. So I do think Jordan Ta'amu is very interesting going into this week. He has a really high rushing floor. Houston has a very good chance of getting up early on this team, and then this team forced to play from behind, which I think makes Jordan Ta'amu a really strong play. He's probably going to be my cash game quarterback, kind of depending on what I can make work. But that rushing floor is really solid. I would say the only issue is maybe pairing him up with guys like we mentioned. The Damian Washington's one guy I like a good amount, and there's a few other guys on that team that I think has a lot of upside. You know, Marcus Lucas, Alonzo Russell as well. Obviously, DeMornay Pearson out, like we mentioned, are a couple guys. But for this sake, I kind of like to go with Matt McGloin. I think that he's going to go extremely overlooked here. And it's going to be on the opposite of that DC game. So if I like DC and I think that they're going to play from behind, I think New York might have to be forced to throw the ball a little bit. They weren't forced last week. They put a pretty nice beat down on Tampa Bay, and we see that Mac McGloin only had to throw the ball 29 times. He did have 5 pass attempts, deep pass attempts, which I think is going to be very interesting for him. There's about a 17% rate, and he's going to want to be a guy that I like to target, especially when I do like some of these wide receivers that we mentioned. So obviously, you know, we got Joe Horn, we got Mikael McKay, Colby Pearson. And I recommend if you're going to be playing multiple sides of this, is just to get as much exposure over here as possible. I think McKay, Horn, obviously guys that we talked about and we put down earlier. Even Colby Pearson, like I said, is going to be a guy I think has have a lot of interest. Don't hate Jake Powell. Not a guy I'm really going to look to. I just don't think it's needed. And then we can go ahead and we can bring it back. And here's, I think, it's a very strong bring it back with a Jarrell Presley. You know, you easily could bring it back with one of those wide receivers. I don't think that's an issue whatsoever. But I kind of like to bring it back with Jarrell Presley here. Now we can just plug in any random defense. Just plug in the Wildcats. Who cares? All right. Now we got about a little less than 8K left, guys. You can do almost whatever we want. Right? Well, if we like Jeff Badette, if I like a good amount this week, one of my favorite wide receiver plays, GPP wide receiver plays, because I do like Landry Jones, easily plug him in there, then you have enough room to go everywhere else. Keenan Reynolds is a guy I like a good amount. I think that he's going to go massively overlooked. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like 5% owned, 6% owned this week. And he saw 7 targets, led the team in snap percentage. He played 94% of the team snaps. Nobody else on the team played 70%. So he's just going to be a guy I'm going to have a lot of interest in as well. I think he's a fine play. But these are kind of some of the lineups and kind of the ideas where I'm going here, guys. Like I said, I'm going to try to get as much exposure to some of these defenses as possible. As far as running backs go, I'm only typically going to play one of them. I really like Terrell Presley. I like Devin Smith a little bit. I like Elijah Hood. And then Lance Dunbar. Those are probably my top 4 overall. There's a few other guys I do like, but those are probably the top 4. As far as wide receivers go, I do like some of these guys up top. Sammy Coates is probably my favorite. Jeff Badet is one of my favorites. Cam Phillips is probably my favorite cash game. Higher priced wide receiver. As far as like some cheaper guys, Jalen Tolliver, one of my favorite wide receiver plays on the slate. He's just way too cheap for his snap percentage and targets that he saw. And then obviously a guy we talked about, Joe Horn, who is my favorite cash game play. I'm just going to put him in and not really think twice about it. 4 cash games. And those are probably my top 4, 5, 6 wide receiver plays. Like we said, Keenan Reynolds is going to be a guy that I'm going to have interest in. I think he's going to be a really strong GPP play this week. He's going to go really, really overlooked. So don't forget about him. But that's kind of it, guys. Like I said, this was pretty quick, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make this as quick as possible. I'm already registered for all my contests. Now I'm just going to go in and finalize all my GPP lineups, finalize my cash game lineup. I know last week I mentioned I played about around $400, and it's about the same I'm doing this week. So I'm excited for that. So guys, I hope everyone had a good day. I hope everyone is ready for tomorrow. I hope everyone is prepared. Hope everyone has read through the article that I had posted, watched the videos. I really appreciate it. If you guys could just go ahead and like this, subscribe, that would mean a lot to me as well. Like I said, I'm going to try and get this out a lot more often going forward, hopefully next week. I was pretty busy with NBA this past week, but since that is NBA is going to be on break next week, I'm going to likely be able to do a review on Monday or Tuesday, kind of breaking down what we saw from this past week, where we went right, where we went wrong, and hopefully be able to do that a little bit more going forward. If you guys are interested in some of my top plays or some of the other data sets that I kind of went over earlier, or a lot more other data sets that I didn't get to mention, that is over at my Patreon. Like I said, that is patreon.com/mystic, MYSTIC, Mac, MACDFS. And I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a good day, and I hope you guys crush all your lineups tomorrow. Bye.